So, when I first was doing the 2UZ swap in my 1989 Toyota pickup, I got a whole heap of comments from people wondering why I didn't go with a 1UZ instead. It's lighter, it has 6-bolt main bearing cabs, it's got beefier rod, and it makes close to the same power. And after the 2UZ went up in flames, I replaced it with a 1UZ. And now, some of you guys are saying, I should have replaced it with another 2UZ. What? Brought to you in part by Overland Outfitters. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in, and today we are discussing why I decided to go with a 1UZ instead of replacing the 2UZ after it lit on fire during the first start on the engine swap in my 89 Toyota pickup. So let's start off by talking about why I originally even chose to go with a 2UZ in the first place. And as some of you might know, my truck used to have a supercharged 3.4 liter V6 that I swapped in it years ago. And let me tell you, that's been an absolutely fantastic motor. It's reliable, it makes okay power for what it is, but the biggest downside for me was the fact that I had to run premium fuel, and realistically, it just wasn't worth it for the amount of power that supercharged V6 put out. And not only this, I was also just kind of craving a change, if that makes sense. So swapping in that V8 seemed like a pretty good idea at the time. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit of a purist when it comes to my Toyota pickup, so I knew whatever V8 I find, it needs to be from a Toyota to go in my truck. Leaving the UZ series of engines, they're really the only option here. And guess what? I found that original 2UZ essentially free. I literally just traded a whole bunch of parts off of a parts 4Runner I have, and in return I got this extremely rotten 2000 Toyota Tundra with the 4.7 liter V8. And at first, I thought it was perfect. It was the non-VVTi, it still had the throttle cable, and the ECM didn't have any sort of immobilizer, meaning this engine checks all of the boxes to make it a pretty straightforward engine swap. And here is that 2UZ now. As I mentioned earlier, this engine erupted in the flames on first start. And realistically, this engine can easily be saved and ran again. And here's why I opted not to. The kilometers on this engine appeared to be super high. And I say appeared because I don't actually know the exact number. The guy I got it from originally said it had 240,000 kilometers on it, and then later changed his mind and told me it had 280,000. Something I noticed after was the timing belt sticker. And the timing belt sticker said that the timing belt was last replaced at 160,000 miles. And this was in 06. If I had to guess, the 280,000 he told me was accurate, but it was in miles, not kilometers. Which would kind of explain why almost every single bolt inside this engine was badly corroded, and I couldn't do anything as far as maintenance without breaking several bolts. And with just that bit of information is enough to convince me not to reuse this engine. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, come on, that's not that bad. But you need to realize at the end of the day, this engine has been through a fire. Literally everything plastic, all the injectors, all the coils, the whole wiring harness, the ECM, all need to be replaced. Same with, every seal on the top of the engine, the starter. I mean, it all adds up to well over $1,000. And for that price, I can just find a whole other motor that hasn't been through a fire. And I did. I present to you my 1UZ FE. This bad boy is from a 1995 Lexus SC400. This is a junkyard motor, and I paid $800 for it, plus another $120 to get it shipped. It has 340,000 kilometers on it, or 211,000 miles, and is in absolute fantastic shape for a 26-year-old motor. This is an older version of the 1UZ, so it's pre-VVTi, so it makes less power, but it does make up for it with beefier internals, it's a non-interference engine, and it's easier to wire. And let me tell you, this engine has been an absolute sweetheart. So far, not a single broken bolt, and no corrosion to be found. All of the electrical connector clips are in really good shape. The engine isn't fighting me almost every step of the way when I'm trying to do maintenance, much unlike the 4.7 liter 2UZ I previously had in the truck. And another huge bonus to the 1UZ is the weight. I was honestly a bit concerned about the weight associated with the 2UZ. That sucker weighed over 560 pounds, and I wasn't sure how that was going to translate to wear on my front end components and how well it would let me float on snow, or, you know, it's just general off-roading capabilities having so much weight. And guess what? The 1UZ only weighs like 390 pounds. That is significantly lighter, and it's even lighter than the V6 I used to run in this truck, thanks to its all aluminum block. So in theory, it should run just as good, if not better, than the old Supercharged 3.4 did, because it's a tiny bit lighter. And of course, I've got a few bits of maintenance I need to do before this truck is ready to leave the shop with the new 1UZ installed. Of course, learning from experience, injector seals are on that list. This engine's injector seals 100% do not leak, but I'm gonna replace them anyways. Also, spark plugs, cap and rotors, timing belt, the water pump. Also, I recently noticed the alternator is making some weird crunchy noises, so that's gonna be replaced. The rubber bits inside the harmonic balancer is getting worn out and separating, causing the harmonic balancer to actually wobble a bit, so that's gotta get replaced too. Let's talk about what I need to do to actually put in the 1UZ versus what I had to do with the 2UZ. Engine mounts. Their bolt pattern on the block is completely different, so I need to make those again. Actually, kinda worked in my favor, because when I remade those, I managed to tuck the 1UZ back, like 3/4 of an inch more than I was able to get the 2UZ. As for bolting the 1UZ to my R150, so I touched on this in the 2UZ engine swap series. I used the KS Racing Kit from eBay, which includes the bell housing, the flywheel, and the clutch kit, and a whole bunch of other parts. Now, this is sold and labeled as for 1UZ to R150, and it just happens to work on a 2UZ, which is what I used. But yeah, so now it's actually getting bolted to what it's labeled to be used for. So yeah, I'm using that exact same combo, bolting it to the 1UZ instead of the 2UZ, like it's labeled for. And yeah, that worked great. That factory rear sump 1UZ oil pan that I bought to put on the Tundra, well, that exact same oil pan happened to come on my 1UZ, so I don't need to bother replacing the oil pan in this case, which is pretty convenient. So at the end of the day, going from a 2UZ back to a 1UZ requires actually pretty minimal parts and is pretty straightforward. And the surprising bonus is how the 1UZ looks. I honestly think the 1UZ looks way better in my engine bay than the 2UZ ever did. The intake manifold and the valve covers, they've got so much more style. It's like Toyota took their time and really cared about how this engine was gonna look in the engine bay. And the 1UZ actually started in 1989. My pickup is also a 1989 and is the first year of this body style, making my engine a bit more period correct of the truck, if that's something you care about. Anyways guys, that about wraps up yet another episode of Dirt Garage. I hope you enjoyed it. And as you can tell from this video, yes, the 1UZ is in fact currently installed inside my pickup. And no, you did not miss an install video. In fact, I honestly did not film very much of it because I felt like I was just repeating absolutely everything I already did when I installed the 2UZ. And when I film, it tends to make jobs take twice as long as they should take. And honestly, I just wanted to put my head down, get to work, get this thing running, and get back out on the trails. Anyways guys, if you like this stuff, please remember to give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new. I upload weekly Toyota building, wheeling, off-roading content, and yeah. We'll see you next week.
I'ma make a couple stacks, do exactly what I want to. Mix a couple tracks, get a lady that I'm drawn to. Turn up to the max, get me faded till I'm gone, dude. I do what I want, couldn't stop me if you wanted to. I just work hard, yeah, harder than the rest. Some people say I'm lucky, others say